All right, everybody. Today we're going to be learning about contractions versus possessives and then how to make plurals. So let's start with plurals because I feel like that would probably be the easiest for you guys to begin with. So we know that when we're making a noun plural that we're going to add s or es. Okay? So how do we make most things plural? By adding s or es. Obviously, there are those words that are irregulars, right? Those words that we know you don't just add s or es. For example, those irregular words are words like children. So the singular form of children is child, but the plural form of child is children. You don't say childs, and you don't say childs with an es either. Child to children, okay? And there are plenty of other words that are like that you don't just add s or es. But we're going to focus on our most common words. So, for example, you have your singular dog. And how do you make it plural? You add an s. Now you have multiple dogs. Remember that singular means one. Singular means one. And plural means two or more than two. It could be 10,000, it could be 50 million, it could be 5, it could be 4, it could be 2. Okay? Same thing with cat. Singular. How do we make it plural? We add an s. Cats. The words that you add es to end in x, ch, sh, z, and y. These words that end in the letters x, ch, sh, z, and y, you add es to make them plural. So for example, you have the singular box, and in order to make it plural, you add es, boxes. Box ends in an x, so we know that you have to add es. Singular bunch, to make bunch plural, because it ends in a ch, we have to add es. Bunch turns into bunches, adding es. Then we have bush. Bush is the singular. In order to make it plural, since bush ends in sh, we have to add es. Bush to bushes. Quiz is the singular. It ends in z, and we know that if it ends in z, in order to make it plural, we have to add an es. Quizzes. And this is irregular as well because, look, it goes from one z, quiz, to two z's, quizzes. But you still have to add the es to make it plural. And finally, body. Body is a singular. It ends in y, so we know we have to add es, but we don't just add es with words that end in y. We have to change the y to an I, and then we add es. With words that end in y, a lot of words that end in y, okay? A lot of words that end in y, we drop the y and we add ies. Okay? There are some words that end in y, like destroy, for example, where you would only add an s. He destroys everything, right? But then again, that's not a noun. So that's the difference. Is with nouns, you have to drop the y and add an ies. Okay? So remember, with singular nouns, in order to make them plural, you add s or es. The only time you add es is if they end in x, ch, sh, z, or y. Okay, now let's talk about possessives. Possessives, okay? So, Brad's dog bit me. Brad's dog bit me. The dog belongs to Brad. The dog belongs to Brad, okay? He has ownership over the dog. Brad is a singular noun. He's our singular subject, okay? And when you have a singular subject and you're trying to make a possessive subject out of it, you have to hook on the s with an apostrophe. So you have Brad, who is one boy, okay? And because it's singular, you hook on the S with an apostrophe. Brad apostrophe S. Brad's dog. Brad's dog. On the flip side of that, we have the girls' show is tonight. The girls' show is tonight. Now, the show belongs to the girls. The show belongs to the girls. The girls are the ones performing the show. It's their show, okay? Girls is the subject. Girls is our noun, and it already has an S on it, so it's plural. Remember we just talked about with plurals? You take singular, girl, and in order to make it plural, you add an S. So we have girls. It's already plural, and we know that because it has an S. So the only thing you have to add is an apostrophe. You just hook on an apostrophe. There's already an S, so you have to hook on an apostrophe at the end. Girls, apostrophe. Girls, apostrophe. So with a singular noun, Brad, you have to hook on the S with an apostrophe. With a plural noun that already has an S, girls, all you have to do is add an apostrophe. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is contractions versus possessives. Okay, so it's very easy to get mixed up because they both have an apostrophe with them. But what you need to do is break apart the possessive and the contraction. If you can break them apart and it makes sense in the sentence, then it's probably a contraction. If you can't break them apart, or if you try and it doesn't make sense in the sentence, then it probably is a possessive. Let's look. For example, we have our contractions. We have can't, cannot, haven't, have not, whose, who is or who has, should've, should have, and she'd, she had, or she would. Now these are just a few examples of our contractions. But, for example, if you had a sentence that said, she's going home. She's going home. I would take this word she's and I would break it up as the contraction. She is going home. That makes sense. Now try with she has. She has going home. And now you have to think to yourself, which one makes more sense? Definitely she is going home. You can do that with all of your contractions. Break them apart and reread the sentence. And that'll help you know if the sentence makes sense with the contraction that you've chosen. Then you have your possessives. Benjamin's bike is at my house. The bike belongs to Benjamin. But watch what happens when I try to break up Benjamin's into a contraction. I took Benjamin's and it has an apostrophe S. And I know apostrophe S either means is or has. So Benjamin is bike is at my house. Does that make sense? No. So let's try again, because Benjamin's with an apostrophe S means is or has. So maybe has is it. Benjamin has bike is at my house. Does that make sense? No. So Benjamin's with an apostrophe S shows ownership, which means that it has to be a possessive. If you cannot break up the contraction into two different words that make sense in a sentence, then it's not a contraction. It's a possessive.